So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm delighted to chair this panel at EH 2016. So we'll spend the next 1 hour or so sharing experiences from friends of the regional research and education networks. Let me start by introducing very quickly the panelists. My far right, Jim Ghadbane, who is President and CEO of CANARIE. And as CEO, he is responsible for achieving the company's objectives as stated in its current agreement with the government of Canada. Jim joined CANARIE as Chief Technology Officer in May 2010, and he is an experienced leader in the ICT industry. Prior to joining CANARIE, Jim held a variety of executive positions at leading technology companies. Next to him is Pascal Hoba, who is the CEO of the Ubuntunet Alliance, the regional research and education network for Eastern and Southern Africa. He's leading this organization since January 2015. Previously, he was Director of Knowledge Management and ICT Services at the Association of African Universities, based in Accra, Ghana. Before he joined AAU, he worked as Program Officer at ADEA, IIEP UNESCO, head office in Paris, France. And next to him, we have Salem Alagtash, who is Professor of Computer Engineering at the German Johnathon University, and leading the development of the Arab States Research and Education Network in his capacity as the German Senior Advisor on ICT and Technology. Currently, Salem is leading e-infrastructure development across the Arab region, with hubs in London, Fujairah, and Alexandria, linking Arab national research education networks as part of EC-funded projects. Then we have next to Salem David West, who joined Dante in 2001 and has led and managed regional research education networking projects outside Europe. He has run the EU-Med Connect project, providing regional networking for North Africa and Middle East since its outset in 2004. He has also developed regional networks across South and Southeast and Central Asia. He also contributes to Dante's core business of building and operating the Pan-European network, GEANT, and its global relationships. Previously, David was a senior manager at British Telecom for 15 years in a number of international roles. And next to me is Johnathon Chapman. John retired as Chief Information Officer from Georgetown University in Qatar in January 2016. Currently residing in Malaysia, he is a consultant for Internet 2 on global Indian relations. For more than 25 years, John has worked in the field of information technology as an administrator, consultant, teacher, and technologist. So we have a panel of these very distinguished friends who will share with us some experiences. And what I will do in the first instance is to ask the panelists to give a very high-level description of their organization, what it is about, what are their current focus, strategies, etc. And I will start with Jim, please. You have 3 to 4 minutes.
Oh, thank you. First, well, Assalamu alaikum. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. It's always nice to get out and visit other parts of the world and see the same sort of passion that we see in Canada for higher ed and everything else. And so I really want to thank you for inviting me here. Give you a quick summary of CANARIE and to follow the theme, like where do I think CANARIE is going. CANARIE is, for those of you who are not familiar, a federally funded organization, but coming up to 24 years old, so quite an achievement. And that's really a testament to the strong governance in the organization. The organization is continue to look at what it wants to do next and has a very sophisticated mechanism of ensuring it's adding value to the taxpayer, which is the ultimate source of everybody's funding, I believe, in this room and around the world in the R&D space. We have about 23,000 kilometers of fiber in our portion of the network. Canada is a very big country. That does not include the fiber networks that exist in the 10 provinces and 3 territories we have. It's a federated system. We have provincial networks that are providing local services and connectivities, and then CANARIE essentially operating more like GEANT than some of the other more traditional ASRENs that you might see. We recently upgraded the network to 100 gig, so we're supporting 100 gig from one end of the country to the other. And as well, we partnered with 4 other international ASRENs, including SurfNet, Internet 2, Ubuntunet, GEANT, to start to consolidate some of the international connectivity. For those of you who get into the space, you recognize that international connectivity is very, very expensive. And rather than every ASREN in the North Atlantic doing their own thing, we found mechanisms of actually sharing the cost and sharing the capacity. So CANARIE has the benefit now of having moved from a 10 gig, or actually 20 gig circuit across the North Atlantic to 30 gig, 30 gig, but now in a configuration that is fully reliable, fully redundant. So better availability, higher capacity at roughly the same price. And that's done through collaboration with our international peers. We also work with the international community in the ASREN CEO Forum, and then outside of that, what's called the Global Network Architecture. Pascal is a member of the ASREN CEO Forum, and we're looking at mechanisms of actually bringing better connectivity around the world to the benefit of all research and education, like globally. It's an initiative. If you have any kind of appetite to understand what's going on or want to contribute, get involved. It's an open initiative. It's called the GNA. If you think there's a website, if you want to look it up, gna.net, I think it is. Looking at you, Alexander, because Lars is there too. Lars might tell me if I've given you the wrong URL. Like other ASRENs, we run the identity management services. Thank you for having Jerome here. Where's Yusuf? It's a treat. I was at the Geneva airport on the way here. I was in a little pod out on the tarmac, and I had Ed Jerome. I thought, how fantastic is this? I didn't have to pay any roaming charges while I was transiting. Unlike other ASRENs, though, because of our direct funding model, we also have funds to do innovative things that go outside the network. We fund research software. I was talking to a lead earlier today about some of the work that's going over at the OSCOM conference right now, the open source conference. CANARIE has been funding research software since about 2007. We have if you want to see the kind of software tools we have, go to science.canarie.ca. They're all. You'll find things like data management tools, visualizers, and anything you might want to have to manage your research software. We also provide services to the private sector. In 2010 we started offering cloud services, virtual computers to small businesses in Canada to have them kind of understand how the cloud infrastructure as a service could change their business models. And most recently, we're giving out portions of the network to ICT companies in the country to come in and test next-gen networking technologies. And so we have a very broad mandate, very broad suite of things we do. And lastly, I'll say in terms of the future, I think the continual push to the cloud is going to be something that we kind of all ignore at our peril, right? The capacity that Amazon is building out and Microsoft and Google in terms of data centers is absolutely going to dwarf anything you might think about building yourselves. And you know, as a collective ASREN community, we really need to think hard about how we leverage that to the benefit of our members. And that's not to say we should move everything to the commercial cloud. Hybrid solutions are fantastic, but we really need to think hard about how this changes the way research and education is delivered.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Pascal, please.
The Ubuntunet Alliance has a name. We cover eastern and southern of Africa. our main objective is to provide connectivities and services to our member ASREN. We have a variety of ASREN and members from South Africa institutions to the less developed countries. So far, what we have been able to achieve is the bandwidth cost in our regions. If I give you some figure, you'll be surprised that even 5 years ago was absolutely prohibitive, completely prohibitive. We were able for our work through the support of European Union Commissions. We have been able to have our own network and provided connectivity to our members and bring down the cost from 1,000 to 600 and to $90 Mbps to now $25 Mbps, and we think that next year we'll reduce it again. So within a period of 6 years, we have brought down the price, divided maybe 20 times. So what we now are trying to reach out is really to train massively our members, because changing our network engineering to be responsive to the member institution requires more training. So we are doing more training, and we want to provide also some new innovative way of support our members, additional services through cloud. They need it huge in our regions, and pay more attention on our members' need. We think that, of course, we are not, our member institutions are not well in terms of resources, it's well equipped as American universities. However, for what they are doing, we think that is our responsibility to listen to them and to be proactive and provide the technical support that they need so that we are more relevant to them. So we are now thinking about a portfolio of a variety of service in addition of the connectivity to our members. This is what I can say from now.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Salem, we are your guests, so I will skip you for now. So please,
Speak at last.
Thank you, Boubakar. So I am here representing Internet 2, and Internet 2 is the national ASREN of the United States. It was formed on the 1st of October 1996. Why is it number 2? Well, that was because they gave away number 1. The universities in the U.S. who had assisted in the construction of the first Internet commercialized it in the early 1990s, figuring that no one would ever use it very much, and therefore they could continue to do their work but still allow the commercial aspects of the world to share in it. It didn't last very long, and they soon discovered that they really needed an internet of their own. It exists to facilitate collaborative efforts between U.S. higher institutions, research institutions, looks at delivering mission-critical services for them. Yes, it was first focused on bandwidth and network. However, it has certainly gone well beyond that now. And it works across the higher education industry, regional networks, the international networks, government agencies, and research and cultural or institutions. An example is the Smithsonian is now a member of Internet 2. Top priorities for Internet 2 at this point in time is certainly looking at the national ASREN network. They have a 100 gig backbone around the United States at this time, but their objective is to ensure that we continue to have abundant bandwidth with zero congestion and capacity for innovation on the network between the research institutions and their members. They're also looking seriously at our identity and integrating trust and identity services. For many years we've used Shibboleth, and that is certainly a common tool worldwide, but it needs to be expanded, it needs to be modernized, and so they have a project called TIER that is underway to look at that. Some numbers is there are now more than 500 Internet 2 members. They have 3,500 institutions that are eligible for what we have as a Net Plus services, which are other services that are provided. They move 5 petabytes of traffic on the network every day, and the expectation is that either this year or next year we will cross 1 exabyte of traffic carried on the network. Over 100 countries we're connected to over 100 countries through our partnerships around the world. They have a capacity of approximately around 17 terabytes per second on the network. So, the motivation is to support our members in their roles, and we want to do that by providing them the best possible network to work on, and then back-end services to help facilitate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. So, David?
Okay, thank you very much. As I think everyone knows, I work for GEANT, and I think most people know that GEANT is by now is the pan-European research and education network, owned by all the European ASRENs, and we're here to meet their international needs, and of course to meet the needs of their users across Europe. That's the prime business. I've already spoken about our regional activities as well. We're in the 3rd year now of the 4th phase of EC funding of GEANT, and we have a programme that will keep running up till 2021 in this current phase. You could say by now that that it looks like we will automatically get funded. It doesn't. It never feels like that, and we have to work very hard to keep ahead of the demands of both the European Commission and our users to make sure that we stay ahead in that sense. So we're pedaling pretty hard beneath the surface, even if we feel like it looks like we're quite a permanent institution. We are still working very hard to expand and improve our network. I noticed recently we've now got a route between 2 European cities, which is now 1 terabits of second capacity. That's the first time we've done that. So 500 gigs was the previous highest one. So the network is expanding very fast. We have a lot of equipment that we operate on that network to light it and route traffic over it and provide services over it. And that sort of underlying effort will continue. But as Steve Cotter was saying in his presentation there, we're taking a much more of a service focus now, and we are. If I compare ourselves to a couple of years ago, there's an awful lot more emphasis now on providing services, including security and infrastructure, particularly cloud-based services and professional services to support users and their needs. The European Commission does remain a very important stakeholder in us as they continue to pay roughly half the costs of the GEANT programme in Europe, as well as additional contracts for the overseas activities we do. I think we're getting a sort of higher level relationship again with the EC, which is very good, and we're expanding our activities to more of the EC directorates. There's different directorates that provide funding for different services, and we're starting to work with new directorates at the moment in terms of, for example, a project we have called Bella, which is providing, supporting investment in cable to Latin America, for example. We're also in early discussions with, again, the EC about a project called the European Open Science Cloud that DG Connect has envisioned to radically improve the access to cloud services and connectivity for Europe's scientists across the piece. That's still being defined, but I mean, we are one of a large number of organisations that are committed to supporting that effort. Final thing I was just saying this stage, which is sort of is perhaps an internal issue in a sense, is that you will have noticed that the UK voted earlier in the year to leave the European Union, and yet quite a lot of GEANT activity is UK based. Needless to say, we are looking very carefully at what the implications of that are, and we will be probably taking some internal actions to ensure that all our relationships are undamaged. I think what I think we're expecting is that certainly as far as the outside world is concerned, you should expect that everything that GEANT has been doing in the past will continue. Internally, we may well be restructuring somewhat to make sure that to preserve business continuity, so internally we may be spending quite a lot of time looking at our structure, but we do not expect that to have any significant effect on either what we do in Europe or what we do here and in other world regions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Last but not least, Salem, our host.
So you don't want to say anything about WACREN?
Maybe 2 words.
Got going now.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason I introduced Boubakar because he's running the WACREN, the Western Africa Research Education Network, in addition to Pascal, who's running the Ubuntunet that covers the eastern and southern part of Africa. And we consider ourselves as ASREN that we cover the northern part of Africa as well as the eastern Mediterranean countries and the Gulf region. So ASREN is the Arab States Research Education Network, which is a non-profit organization that was established in 2010 in Germany, registered officially, but it was launched at the League of Arab States, and the honorary chair of the Arab States Research Education Network is the Secretary General of the League of Arab States. As you know, the Arab region consists of 22 countries, and area is about 12.9 square kilometers, which is huge. It's larger than the U.S., Canada, Brazil, or maybe China. And this is, in fact, the challenge that we have at the Arab States Research Education Network, because it's a huge area, and there are lots of countries that have different developments. But we consider ourselves as emerging regional research education network, similar to my colleagues in Ubuntunet Alliance as well as in WACREN. We have here some terms, maybe terabits per second. What did you say? Exia?
Exabyte.
Exabyte. Those are things that we dream of in the Arab States Research Education Network. We're just when we seek funding from our partners in the European Commission, we're thinking about 45 megabits per second, maybe 155 megabits per second. For us, gigabits per second is a dream as a network. So I think this is the story I want to tell. Is we're still in the emerging regional research education network, but we hope that together with our partners, strong supporters, GEANT Association, is to bring this forward and become competitive to the point where our colleagues have started a long time ago. But I could say that ASREN has a vision, and the vision is now being shaped, is to create this Arab ring, what we call Arab Connect. So this is a ring which is, the discussions that we had with Tata Communications, because they are the main cable providers in the world, I could say, we could have 10 gigabits per second, so we're not thinking about terabits per second. So we're just thinking about, for the whole Arab region, 10 gigabits per second connection that starts from, let's say, Basra in the Gulf Sea, and then goes, covers Iraq, and then covers the Bahrain and Kuwait and Qatar and Emirates, and then go all the way to the Arab Sea, and then covers Yemen, Oman, and then goes to Djibouti. From there we can cover as well Comoros, and then we go to cover Sudan and Egypt and the Red Sea, and then to Saudi Arabia, and then goes through Alexandria to cover Egypt, and then we can take a path that goes to Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and then we go all the way to the northern countries in the Mediterranean, and then link to the POP in the UK and Europe. So this is a kind of vision that we're having today, but one of the challenges that we're facing is the last mile connection in the Arab countries. I always give this example. In Morocco, you could see 1 megabits per second costs 350 euro per month, but let's say in Jordan it's about 15 to 20 euros. So which is, you can see the huge difference between the pricing between different countries. In some other countries it's even cheaper. But what is interesting, and for those who have listened to Helga's presentation yesterday, that for instance Jordan, a long time ago when they had this UMID connectivity, they had it like for 45 megabits per second, and today with 155 megabits per second, the price is about $2,000 a month, which is dramatically has been reduced. And yesterday she has mentioned that this has reduced the cost 98%. So, and this was because of what ASREN has been trying to push on telecom operators to get the prices reduced dramatically. So what we are insisting is, how do we uniform these pricing mechanisms across the Arab region, especially for the research and education networks and for the national research and education networks, to interconnect our institutions, universities, and countries.
Thank you very much, Salem. So after this first round, and just to please Salem, let me just say a few words about WACREN. And WACREN stands for the Western Central African Research and Education Network, so a regional network covering Western Central Africa. So actually, I think we have the same interest as ASREN. And you have a potential membership of 22.
Yes.
And Ubuntunet Alliance, 22?
A bit more.
Potential number of countries.
24.
Okay, we are in the same range. Western Central Africa, 22. Right now we have 14 members, but I must say that we don't have a physical network yet. So all countries are yet to build their own national research and education network. Some are advanced, others not. So we have different level of progress in the region. Our objective is, of course, to do like our sister organizations, Ubuntunet Alliance, ASREN, and others in other parts of the world, is to have a physical network interconnecting them in the region, and to interconnect with the other regional network to join the Global Research Education Network. This is our plan. This was our plan from the beginning, and it was established in 2010. But we hope, and we are pretty sure that with the support of the European Commission through the Africa Connected project, we are very near, to realizing, this objective of interconnecting the first countries in the coming months. Well, I will stop here for now because the panel is more about the gentleman here around me. Actually, I think next time we must have some women, on the panel, so that we bring a bit of gender. into the whole thing. I want to reassure the audience that we'll have the opportunity to ask one or two questions to the panelists. But as I'm the chair, I will take the privilege to ask the first questions. And I will start with John. Because we have here a panel of various experiences, because we have various environments, different environments. And I do think that we can take a lot from the experiences from each of them. We have heard a couple of years back, about a program called US UCAN. And I think that at the beginning it was a lot of controversy, or at least discussions, about the concept. And I would like to know what actually led to the Internet 2, to engage in this program, and how do you assess, the current evolution or status of the program, challenges, successes, that you can share with us, just in 3 or 4 minutes max.
Sure. Okay, so yeah, the project's called US UCAN, or was called US UCAN. It came out of the initiative by the US Obama administration of improving connectivity for the United States, for people in the United States. We have an image of the United States as being this heavily connected country with multi-gigabit connections all over to everyone. And the reality is it's a much different story because there are so many parts of the country, not quite as many parts as Canada, but still a lot of the country has very limited connectivity because of geography. And so there's a lot of investment in the very heavily populated areas, and there's no investment in the lightly populated areas. And so the Internet 2 was one of the bidders on the project. It succeeded in winning the project, and it established it as the US UCAN. We would say it has been a very positive experience. In my numbers that I gave in talking about Internet 2, the one I forgot that actually is very, very important is that the US UCAN resulted in what we called community anchor organized institutions. So those could be schools, those could be libraries, hospitals, anyone who's needing access to the information and transfer of information. And in those institutions, we now have more than 93,000 institutions who have access to each other and to research information through the US UCAN project. So it was the mechanism, this mechanism was established, as I said, around 2000, it was around 2010, 2011. And the idea was that rather than having every K-12 school or public library connect directly, these institutions would connect to their local research and education network. Keeping in mind that in the United States, Internet 2, while it has member institutions, it also has regional networks that connect in their institutions. Very often state-based. So New York has its own research and education network within the U.S., within the state, and they then connect to the Internet too. And so the mechanism was to provide a way to actually connect these schools. So there are 44 states where that type of connection is available. Based on a survey, and the data is a couple of years old. As I said, 93,000 institutions. That's more than 40. That's a 40% increase in the 4 years before that. There had been previous attempts to connect the K-12, but it was very limited. Some of the stats include that 60% of all the public schools and 25% of all public libraries are now connected. More than half of the community colleges in the United States connect to the internet too now. More than 100 academic medical centers connect through using this USUCAN project. And more than 30 telehealth networks connect using the project. Where before they have to depend on very expensive lines, very often, dedicated lines point to point. Now they've got a much more, ubiquitous network to work with. So it has been a success. Obviously, we've still got some numbers to work to still have to be addressed, but.
Thank you, John. Great success indeed. Pascal, 5 years back, I think the Ubuntunet Alliance didn't have a physical network. So you have to build a physical network interconnecting countries in Eastern and Southern Africa and connecting them to the global research and education network through GEANT. Can you share experiences on this process, building a regional research and education network from scratch?
Yes, thank you, Boubakar, for the questions. I think the most important you need some kind of driving tools. I didn't even know about 2 weeks ago when we were having Ubuntunet Connect, colleagues from the CEO from the Kenya Education Network, we just had a chat and said, KNET was created about more than 10 years ago, and it was around USAID project. It was a capacity building project that USAID wanted to call all the ICT director for about 30 universities in Kenya, and the project was about capacity building. Then from there, the benefit for this training, then themselves agreed to meet again and to discuss the establishment of the National Research Education Network. In the case of Ubuntunet Alliance, you know that Ubuntunet Alliance was created by the idea of African vice-chancellors, not really for research purposes, for the costs, the higher cost of internet. The vice-chancellor made they say the internet was too expensive in that time in 2004 to 2005. So they agreed to find a way to mutualize their resources and to break down the cost. So it started there, but was very slowly until Africa Connect, which was an EU funding project, came on board. And this was really the starting point through the project to have actually the physical network to start connected ASREN with the different countries to provide the trainings and to make Ubuntunet Alliance what it is today.
Thank you. Merci, Pascal, for sharing this with us. Salem, this morning, listening to the presentations, I heard several times that from presenters saying they are connected to ASREN, to GEANT at this speed, etc. I was expecting actually to see that they are connected to a global education network through ASREN. So I know that you are attempting to have a direct interconnection between countries or ASRENs in the region. What are the plans so that this can move forward as soon as possible?
So if you remember, Boubakar, in 2013, when we had the discussion with ISOC and CESCO, and luckily we got donations for the first establishment of a pub, and logically the one that you can create immediately without any barriers, without any issues and problems is just to go to GEANT. And we co-located with WACREN in London, and we established our pub. This is like 2 or 3 years ago. And thanks for GEANT Association for their continuous support, because they are the ones who are now supporting the technical operation of the pub in London. So it's under their NOC operation. So logical, immediate solution you can find for any POP in the region is just to say, okay, Europe, because they have the infrastructure, they have the legal frames, they have everything, ecosystem that can support the operation immediately. Maybe even before starting with the POP in London, we started this discussion with our colleagues in Emirates, Ankabut, with the AGOX. And AGOX is a terminology or maybe initiative or whatever you can call it. It has been in the discussions for the past 4 or 5 years, Ahmed Dabba, 4 years now, but nothing has been materialized yet. And I still remember I was so excited in the beginning with those POPs because, it's really excited, when you say, oh, instead of going all the way to Europe or maybe to New York, is just, peer inside the region and then just from there you create economies of scale and the connection and you just go all together. And I still remember one of the presentations from one of the experts. It's saying, if it is not slow to go and connect in New York, doesn't mean that you take a flight and you go to New York to come to, let's say, from Emirates to Qatar, whatever it is. So anyway, so the idea is, and at the same time, when I got excited, in fact, I developed a proposal for Egypt open exchange point. We're still in the discussion phase. And one of the problems is last mile connection, because the telecom operators inside the countries will not allow you to create a free zone to create this interconnection, because it's a lot of money that they can bring connections and make out of these customers in the education and research. But as I just mentioned, Boubakar, about this Arab Ring, Arab Connect, I think we need political intervention from the League of Arab States, from the ministers of ICT, ministers of higher education as well in the Arab countries, to give this blessing of the interconnection in the last mile for the purpose of research and education network. And as I said, with our discussion with Tata Communications, the 10 gig bits per second ring that covers the Arab countries, a long-term 15 years IRU lease is about 500,000 euros. This is really a good price. So we'll try to negotiate more and see maybe partners that they can get together with us and make this happen. It's a 15 years contract that you can get for 500,000 euros. So what we're trying to do now is, start with this kind of ring, and maybe with our discussions with some of the countries, we can get the last mile connection for the research education network. We could call it a free zone, or maybe it's subsidized, whatever you call it, but at least we want to reach to the research education network and make them part of the global research education networks and interconnection with the rest of institutions across the world.
Thank you very much, Salem. Yeah, I do actually recall the discussion we had about this in Dubai at EH 2012, and when the chairman actually announced that UAE will be the hub, at least a hub, for ASREN. But I do hope that in the framework of Africa Connect 2 and EU Connect, we will find a way to sensitize policy and decision makers, and with the help also of the operators, who are actually partners, we'll find a solution on that we are working on for so long.
You should give us the floor, because we have to add something to the discussion, because we are involved in...
No problem. I will give you...
We need to clarify some facts.
I will give you the floor very soon. David, when I was introduced you, I talked about you joining Delta, and you all know that you have now merged Delta as much with Terena. We talked about Brexit. I'm sure it's not the Brexit that led to this merger, because the merger was before.
Indeed, it was. Yes.
Before Brexit. So, what was behind this merger, the rationale, and how do you see, and what will change, and what won't change?
Okay, it's a good question, and it's one that is often asked as well, because for over 20 years, from the very early days of the formation of research and education networking in Europe, there have been two organisations. One was Dante, and and one was called Terena. And Dante's role was, broadly speaking, to build and manage the pan-European network, and Terena's role was broadly to undertake kind of policy and foresight studies, run annual conferences to build the community, training activities for community building purposes. So two moderately, fairly distinct roles. The organisations two more or less coexisted over that time, occasional ups and downs, but nonetheless more or less continued. But in recent years there was increasingly discussion within the broader community as to whether or not it would be better if they were merged and brought together. And eventually, 2 years ago, that happened and merged under the name of GEANT, which means that not only now is there now a GEANT name for the organisation that does all that, we also have the GEANT name for the network that it runs across Europe, and we also have the GEANT name for the GEANT project, which is partly resourced by the GEANT organisation and partly resourced by the European NRENs that are the members of the consortia along with us. If you're still following that, you're doing quite well, I think. So, but nonetheless, so there's a little bit of ambiguity there has been created, so we have to be careful how we express that. We've certainly had a new logo, and we've got a new name, and a few things like that. So, has it made any difference in any more tangible way, is the question. I would say yes, it has. I think some of the changes are quite subtle ones. Certainly everything that we were doing before is still being done. So the organisation in Cambridge that was Dante is more or less building and running the network layer. The people in Amsterdam have still got more of a focus on the above-the-line services and on the policy side, I say to an extent. But I think for the outside world, I think there's a big advantage because there is now a single organisation, a community mouthpiece that is relating to the stakeholders in Europe, the Commission, the big user groups, the NRENs that owned both organisations as well. I sense there's a sort of a more stability there than there was before. It's given us a much sharper focus on services, so we have a lot more, there's a better focus on both the sort of network services layer and the above the services layer and consulting services now than there was before, thanks to pooling people more closely together. Although I said, that some things happen in Cambridge, some things happen in Amsterdam, that's now changing as well, and every time a new job is advertised, the post can be located in either location, so you don't have to choose, but you change whichever location you want. And one you mentioned at the start, Boubakar, about Brexit. Funny enough, although we did not plan for this, one of the sort of the interesting sort of things that the merger has done for us is it's given us 1 foot very clearly remaining in Europe, namely through our Netherlands legal entity and our Amsterdam, and 1 foot which, well, may be going to leave Europe at some point or may not, we don't really know yet, but where things are more uncertain, and that gives us more flexibility in terms of the commercial structures that we may need to employ in the future to maintain the business continuity. So for some planned reasons and perhaps one unforeseen reason, I think overall it's been pretty positive.
Thank you very much. So you had something, you got some signals from somewhere that asked you to push, this is a merger. If you can share with us, we know that there are several funding models, of grants around the world. And if I understand well, CANARIE is fully funded by the Canadian government. So what are your thoughts? And what do you think are the risks, that come with that? Or do you see any risks there? Or what about sustainability? Or is it a framework that maybe a government that is changing cannot change? A government that is coming.
So I was hoping you were going to ask me, have I met the new Prime Minister?
Yes.
Yes. That question. Before I answer that, هذا عنده حجر, right? Nobody عنده حجر, but it's علي بس رد على سامحوني على my accent there.
You're streamed online. Be careful.
I know. I was just saying, I'm going to start by telling you a story, just a true story. Canadian researcher.
Knows, but we
Andy Bonadura.
remember Bush accident in Iraq.
I don't remember that actually. That sounds scary. This is a true story. A Canadian researcher put in for a research grant, and she also wanted to actually custom design an airplane. Well, why do you want an airplane? Well, because I'm doing research in Africa. I have to be able to get to Africa. Really? Well, there's actually lots of planes you could just buy. Well, she said, well, just buy one. Well, actually, you know, there's a lot of flights that actually fly to Africa. You could just take those flights. So she decided, okay, well, I'll actually downgrade it. What I'll do is I'll rent a plane. I'll go out and become a pilot. Because she convinced herself that she had to, from soup to nuts, own the whole problem. Is that a phrase familiar to you? She wanted to basically have total control over everything. So I might get around to answering your question, but I have to echo what I heard this morning. What I heard this morning was everyone is in here, coming in here, talking at this lovely conference, and I love this conference, and talking about what they're doing about how to connect to GEANT or to Internet 2. And I will tell you that in Canada, why we're funded the way we are funded is largely because it's a better way to divide the work. We have provincial networks. They get their money from the universities. They get their money from the hospitals. They get their money from the colleges. The federal government says, well, you know what? We'll put in some money to connect the provinces and then connect them internationally. So the provinces in Canada don't sit there and think, how am I going to connect to Internet 2? How am I going to connect to GEANT? They say, that's somebody else's problem. That's CANARIE's problem. So I would encourage you all to really think hard about how you build a governance structure to actually get there. Now, I'm going to address the question about the politics. Everybody believes that their country has unique politics, that the politics that exist in their country don't exist. We have carriers in Canada. Right? They would say to us, why are you replicating what we're doing? And you know, in our position, because we're funded by the feds, it's a little harder because the feds don't want to look like they're competing with the private sector. We have Bell Canada, a very big company, been around for a long time, named after the inventor of the telephone. That's how long it's been around, right? We have 3 other providers. Our positioning, and I got this oddly enough, talking in the international community. And I'm going to share with you something that I had from Alexander's president, Erwin. And I'm not even going to, I don't want to butcher his last name. But I said to Erwin, like, how do you continue to, how does SurfNet continue to advance services to the R&D sector? His answer was simple. We do not see ourselves as a service provider competing with the private carriers. We are in the business of demand aggregation. We're looking at what the research is happening in the Arab region, and we're coming up, and I would encourage you to think, what's the most cost-effective way to connect all the countries and then connect internationally? And if anybody pushes back on you, you say, well, no, actually, we're not actually competing with you. We're actually procuring services from you that are based on the aggregate need of the research and the education systems in the United States. Is that a compelling enough answer? Well, and nobody threw a tomato at me. Not yet, eh?
Good. Well,
I should start from here.
I'm thinking about that.
How much you pay?
Okay. We have, let's say, about 50 minutes. So, I'm sure. Yes, I know. Please, if you take the floor, introduce yourself briefly, name and institution, and then ask your question. We will take 3-4 questions before, I give the floor to the panel.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Mabouk. I am from Ankabut, the National Research and Education Network in the United Arab Emirates. I need 1 minute to comment on the effort, the announcement of the Sierra Hub A2X. We've done a very good work in that. We have a very good progress in the A2X. Actually, the router is installed in Fujairah, in the smart hub. It is switched on. We have the high-level technical design and low-level technical design are and we had the link from Singapore and to Fujairah was ready for testing. Then the project was put on hold for a certain time. We don't know if it is gonna complete for our partners in Internet 2 and New York University, or it's gonna be shut down because we have the MOU last day, effective day is 31st of December 2016. So we still have 1 month we can renegotiate with our partners in Internet 2 and in New York University, because this was a partnership. The link was built based on partnership. Now, we in Ankabut believe in the partnership of the links. It is not Ankabut Research and Education Network needs to connect to the other end. We have resources, we have researchers, and in the other part of the world, in GEANT, in Europe, they have researchers, and we need to connect the researchers in each other. It's a mutual benefit link. For us, we have invested in the HOX, and we said we can consolidate needs from the Gulf region, from the Arab region, from Saudi Arabia, from Oman, even from Jordan and Egypt. It's cheaper to come to Fujairah because the infrastructure is there than going to Amsterdam and to go there. The expensive part of the link is the domestic link, is to the take from the sea cable to go inside to the country or to go outside the country. For ourselves, for Ankabut, we pay this expensive fee. We have to pay this expensive fee. Now, my question is for all the panelists. Now, the main thing that we, every analyst is struggling, the local analyst at the country level and at the global level, is the operators, the telecom operators, because in some cases they feel us as competitors and therefore business revenue, and in other cases they just don't see us. And that's the case, because they've been in the business for a long time, and they feel that this is a small, you will not affect us.
That's the question.
So, the question is, where is the telecom operators in this room? What are you doing in your role at the regional level to bring, and I see only Tata here, but we have other global operators. What we are doing to aware them about our jobs, what we are presenting to the community, and what is our role as analysts to do that for them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think.
Yes. Okay, here, then the lady in the middle row, you introduce yourself.
Just a very good question.
Can you quickly introduce yourself?
Okay, Habib Yusuf, I'm running the Scientific Center of Tourism in Tunisia, that's offering the internet application services for the academic community in Tunisia. It's a public owned entity. I want to ask specifically Jim, because he said something that I've been hearing actually from various universities in Tunisia. You mentioned that absolutely that Amazon, Google, whatever, they are really working everything we can talk. And they are offering plenty of services for nothing almost. And then I will ask myself, as an internet and access application service provider, what am I going to offer my community? Is it only specific application services? And then everything I let them free? It is not me. I mean, basically, the Ministry of Higher Education let them free to sign education agreement with Google or whatever to get anything they want from Google, and they externalize everything at Google Data Center. And not only that, I mean, you have to be aware of what's going on in some of in Europe and in Arab countries also. There is lots of discussion about identity protection and that sort of thing. So are they, for example, because now it's happening in Tunisia, some university presidents, they have signed already agreement, and they are really getting their things from Google. Just the question, so it seems that you are really urging the academic community to go that way, and us as NREN manager, what are we going to do? Just the pathways?
Thank you. Yusuf?
Well, I can shout.
No, because it's streaming. It's being streamed.
Hey guys, Pascal from GEANT. I have a question for Jim as well.
No.
Sorry.
The questions in stone.
I just see these parallels, as you yourself said, between the setup of GEANT and CANARIE. What I see, it's division of labor, I agree, but there is also another element, the membership or the user engagement, and being a little bit remote from the users. So, because obviously the end users are the level and they interact with the others, down at the regional level.
Yeah.
So, do you consider that, or do you see that as a problem, or do you just say that you get enough feedback to really to be able to be in tune with the end users and their requirements?
Thank you. Thank you, Helga. Any other questions?
Visibility, and by no means would we, what I tell you that the model we have doesn't include that, right? Because it's imperative that we know what users are doing. What we do in Canada actually to manage the national research and education, and because of the division of labor, there's a president in every province of that research and education component, and we have what's called an ASREN governing committee where we meet face-to-face quarterly, all the presidents, including myself, to talk about the emerging needs of the NREN that they're bringing from the direct user input, and we also have what's happening from a policy perspective, from a country perspective, where Canada wants to go. It's a very sophisticated model. And in fact, even there's subcommittees that are the technical committees that look at, is the national technology all at the same level, even though some of it is paid for by the universities and some of it is paid for by the federal government. I can go on and on and on about this works. The answer to your question, Yusuf, I would say it depends on what you think you are as an NREN. If you think you're there to deliver bits, then you'll eventually be pushed into that piece. Where I've seen the more successful NRENs, and this is, if you look around the world, there are some very, very world-leading NRENs, and I would encourage you to spend some time talking to Alexander. The NRENs that see themselves as an operating arm of the universities are going to come up with a very compelling reason that's going to push Google into the place the country wants them to be, right? If you see yourself as there to provide connectivity, and that's how your members see you, then you're just going to be relegated to connecting these big data centers to your network to allow them to be delivered to the universities. But if you think like Internet 2 is essentially the national operating arm for the universities in the US. The members of Internet 2 go and say, we need a national strategy around over-the-top services. Internet 2 responds with a Net Plus initiative. And how, or the members will say, what's the strategy to unlocking cloud services from Amazon? Well, Internet 2 will negotiate and strike a deal with these big providers on behalf of their members. And it's largely because this is the relationship they have. The relationship is more of a, are you inside their system, or are you seen as a service provider delivering services to your member universities? If you're inside the system, then you're going to be that operating arm that they need as a collective. Does that help answer the question?
Thank you very much, Jim.
I think it's the same answer to the question that.
I will give the chance to the other panelists to address also a bit of this question. So, what are the regional RANs doing to sensitize the operators and let them understand and get them understand that the RANs are actually partners and not competitors? Just 1 minute. Or
Just
you
give
want-
one, I'll just put, like, what I do is I go meet with the most senior person of providers that possibly exist and explain to them why the universities and like the president, met with the president of 3 of the 4 major carriers in Canada and sit down across the table from that person and say, this is why R&E is different than what you're normally trying to sell as an ISP service.
Thank you. Pascal, final word, 1 minute?
I
You can
think,
address questions.
Yeah,
If you have
yeah,
something you can also, make general comments.
yeah, from our perspective, I think is to be more proactive. What happens most of the time in our community is we always have 1 or 2 windows late, and we catch up. What somebody is saying that Google is coming, we have an idea, but so far we are not doing anything. Until suddenly, then we'll be forced to come with a strategy. So I think it's our role as a regional REN to be proactive, to be with our members, to anticipate on the need of what is coming so that we can design a strategy to cover the needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have some experience with operators in Jordan and Morocco and Egypt and some other countries. And my feeling is these operators, they're very responsive when it comes to research education network. We have issued some press releases when we launched the Jordan link to London. This is amazing. They have given us prices that you can never dream of a connectivity even inside Amman itself. But what we need to do is just to work with our partners. And it's just, Jam has exactly said it. Just give us what you want, and then we will work on your behalf in all our countries. So you don't have to negotiate any deal to go to London or GEANT or anywhere. We can do this for you, and we are sure that we can bring to you deals that you can never dream of those deals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. David?
So on Mohammed's question, I mean, both in Europe and in working in regions like this, I mean, we certainly seek to tender everything we can on every occasion. We emphasise at all stages, pre, during and after tenders to the tenderers about the fact that these are not non-commercial services. We encourage quite sort of blatantly the fact there is a need for that. This is to magnify competition as fast as possible, so we do a lot of work like that. It is, however, very difficult if you are working in a market where there is one major operator, or maybe one major operator and a small one who's on the back of that operator, and a weak regulatory regime, which is Emirates is an example of that. So there's some quite significant issues in the Emirates, I think. And we find it varies in this region a lot by country. In Jordan, Salem's absolutely right. I mean, the competition is really quite good now, from nothing where there's 4 operators. Take Morocco, however, where there's 3 operators, who say they're competing. Prices are 4 times as high as for circuits to say London or Europe compared to the Jordan prices. So there's other factors at work there, and sometimes regulatory authorities can help. But I think at the end of the day, I think all you can do is you have to keep trying to work with the operators as partners, and now and again walk away when they won't deliver what you want.
Thank you very much. David, Jeff?
Okay. So, I mean, Jim's comment about Internet 2 being it's a member-run organization, so it's on the inside, not seen as somebody who's on the outside. And as part of that, Internet 2, some of their members are carriers or are major parts of that infrastructure. Sienna is part of is a member of Internet 2, Juniper. So we've got, we have the carriers and not the direct telecommunication providers, but at least we've got a starting point of that conversation to help them and make them understand that they're partners in this. This is not about competition, this is about us doing, this is for the betterment, and, there's a value to them at the long term as well. I think the other thing is too is, you might think of the United States as having, rampant competition across, all of the various markets, and the reality is far from it. And that is that we have in the United States segments of the country where you basically have a single provider because of the way the infrastructure is structured. So yes, there's, I don't even know how many carriers or how many telecommunication providers in the United States, but there are segments of the country where you only have one person you can talk to. And in those parts of the country, the costs are much, much higher. We have exactly the same problem that you're seeing in this region where, where there is competition, you see the prices low. Where there's no competition, you see the prices higher. This is one of the things that drove USUCAN and brought, because then you ended up with a national initiative to make connections in there, and so you had some government pressure behind it just to basically tell these providers you are going to provide basic service at a reasonable price. So, bringing the carriers on board as partners, a thought that keeps traveling through my mind when I look at some of the issues that we deal with is how do we get our story out to the public in a way that the public understands it. Right? Somebody watching today's YouTube broadcast is, the average Scot person is not going to understand a lot of what we've been talking about. Right? So how do we make our story something that everybody understands? And then conversations with the government, but conversations with those people that we need, the industry people that we need, so that they become partners with us, not see us as just another dollar in the pocket.
Thank you very much, John. Before we close this session, I just wanted to say that what you have all said, regarding his concern about the telecom is valid, and competition is key. It's very important, but also the dialogue with the operators. The dialogue and what is just communication. I think Helga has put forward there. I mean, it brings something in your machinery. So it's extremely important. It's not about just the beneficiaries, the immediate beneficiaries of what we are doing, but the whole community understanding what it is about. And I can just share for 1 minute what we have done. Pascal and myself, and was at the Association of African Universities, trying to catalyze the formation of ASRENs, in Africa. Every time we're organizing or supporting what we call national consultation workshops, for the establishment of ASREN in the countries, we insisted every time, to involve the operators. They were there from the first meeting, but not only the operators, but also the regulators, the telecom regulators. And it is a long dialogue, but at the end of the day, we can get something from them. We have started this, this dialogue with regional operators since 2010, but we keep trying, we keep inviting them, to our workshop, to our conferences. And at the end, I can, just 2 months ago, we went to a mission to Cote d'Ivoire. They were stuck with a contract. They could not sign because it was so expensive. But just by accompanying them, to the operators, explaining to them what it is about, and inviting them to the workshop the next day, they just increased the bandwidth by 50% and reduced the price by 60%. So, and we have just a couple of, it was within 2 days. In just a couple of weeks, we ran a tender. We invited the bidders one by one, discussed with them half day each, and explained to them that what you have here on prices is not acceptable. We are not, we are partners. We are not like, a company coming and buying a bandwidth from you. And they just submitted again revised tenders, and price cuts from now is between 50 and 80%. So, and we are not yet at the end of the process. That means at the end we may even have more. So it is really important not to have the dialogue is extremely important. And not to give up. And we are trying to discuss with them since 2010. But at the end of the day, you get something. And before giving the mic to Youssef, I must say that, ASREN, you are here. Salem, Youssef, you are here. I think that Ankabut sent a signal. There is still a window, since end of the year, to strike, to reboot, the process. Okay. So with that, please join me to thank our panelists. Yeah.